Okay, so this is factor by grouping. We only have one more lesson, and this is going to kind of set us up for that last lesson, and then we're done for the year. So exciting. So when you do factor by grouping, you're going to be given a polynomial with 4 terms, and you're going to have to look at the first 2 terms and factor out the GCF. Look at the last 2 terms, factor out the GCF, and then you're going to factor the common binomial, which is what we did in the last lesson. The last lesson, the last 3 days. Okay, so it's just kind of building an extra step onto what we just did. And then what we'll do in our last lesson that we'll do in a few days, I can't remember if we'll do it Thursday or we'll wait till Monday, I'm not sure, but we will just add again the final step onto this. And then we'll learn how to factor quadratics when all the other things that we learned so far don't work. So like the hardest ones to factor, we'll learn how to do those. Okay, so we have 4 examples. So like I said, we're going to look at the first 2 terms, and we're going to see what's the GCF. What do they both have in common? They both have x. How many x's do they both have? They both have x squared. That's the most. They both have 2 x's, right? We can take out. So their GCF is x squared. So I'm going to factor that out of those terms. So when I take x squared out of this, I'm just left with x to the first. Bring down my plus. When I take x squared out of here, I'm just left with 3. Then I'm going to look at my last 2 terms. What's the GCF of those? Well, they do not have an x in common, but what's the biggest thing I can divide both of those by? The biggest number you can divide those both by is 3. Right? So when I divide this term by 3, I'm just left with x. And when I divide this term by 3, I'm left with 3. Now, here is what will tell you if you did this correct. If you did all of that correct, you should have the same factor in the parentheses. If you do not have the same thing in both of the parentheses, you need to go back up and look at what you divided wrong, pick the GCF wrong, you need to pick a bigger GCF, something. As long as you have that, it's just like what you did before. Okay, so pick a different color. So this gives you your first term, x squared plus 3. And this gives you your second term, x plus 3. Okay, and that would be your final answer. All right, we have a few more. All right, so this one, we're going to look at the first term. Now I can divide both of those by 8. I can also take 2 x's out of both of those. Okay, so when I divide this by 8, I'm left with 1. When I take x squared out of there, I'm left with x to the first. We have a minus sign now. When I divide that by 8, I get 7. And when I divide that by x squared, it just goes to 1. So 7 times 1 is 7. All right. My second group, what can I divide both of those by? The GCF of those 2 terms is 2. So when I divide this by 2, I just get 1x. Don't forget your minus sign. When I divide this by 2, I get 7. Okay. I did it correct because those are the same. All right, so my first term is 8x squared plus 2. My second term is x minus 7. And there's your final answer. Okay. All right, now let's look at what happens when this isn't a positive that's being divided out. So when we do this problem, I find my GCF here. My GCF is, I can divide those both by 6, and I can take 2 x's out. So when I divide this by 6x squared, I just get x. When I divide that by 6x squared, I get 1. Now, when I look over here, I have minus 2x minus 2. See, those both have minus. So I'm just going to go ahead and factor that minus or that negative out. Then I can divide both of those by 2. So now on the inside, since I am factoring the negatives out, that means they now become positive in here. So I divide that by 2, I just get x. This becomes a plus because I took the negative out of both terms. So I divide that by 2, I get 1. Okay. Now, if you didn't take the negative out here, then these would both be negative inside the x and the 1, so you wouldn't have the same thing. So that would be your clue that you need to take the negative out if these don't match up. Okay? So now I have 6x squared minus 2 for my first factor, and x plus 1 for my second factor. Okay. Last one. So as you can see, it goes positive, negative, positive, negative. So we don't have to worry about the negatives because they're going to work out to be the same. Right? When you look at this first pair of terms, positive, negative. When I look at the second terms, positive, negative. Okay, when I looked at that last one, I had positive, positive, negative, negative. So I knew I needed to factor something out. The other thing that would be a problem would be if you had positive, negative, negative, positive. That would be a problem because you can't have positive, negative, negative, positive. They have to follow the same pattern. Since they follow the same pattern, I don't need to worry about the negatives. So these first two terms, I can take 2 x's out of, divide that by x squared, and I get x minus, divide that by x squared, I just get 1. Plus, because right, I don't have to worry about taking a negative. What can I take out of those? What does x and 1 have in common? Nothing, right? So I'm just going to factor 1 out of it, right? Because dividing them by 1 is not going to change anything. So I'm still left with x minus 1 on the inside. Okay. I have the same thing on the inside, so it's all good. So if you don't have a GCF to take out, then you just factor out a 1. So now I'm going to x squared plus 1. And I have x minus 1. Final answer. Right? Like, as always, any questions, please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Good luck.